We could fight, Leaf Fletcher said. We know where the entrance is now. We can make a defense line and wait for them. Even if the army tries to come through, they'll find us waiting with our bows. We will certainly set up defenses, Kyrene said, but I fear Clarice is right. The magical borders have kept this camp safe for hundreds of years. If Luke manages to get a large army of monsters into the center of camp by passing our boundaries, we may not have the strength to defeat them. Nobody looked real happy with that news. Kyrene usually tried to stay upbeat and optimistic, but if he was predicting that they couldn't hold off an attack, that wasn't good. We had to find Daedalus's workshop first, Annabeth insisted. We had to find the string and prevent Luke from using it. But wait, if nobody can navigate in there, what chance do we have? Percy asked. I've been studying architecture for years, she said. I know Daedalus's labyrinth better than anybody. From reading about it? Well, yes. That's not enough. It has to be. It isn't. Are you going to help me or not? They both barely realized everyone was watching the two of them like a tennis match. Kyrene cleared his throat and said, First things first, we need a quest. Someone must enter the labyrinth, find the workshop of Daedalus, and prevent Luke from using the maze to invade the camp. We all know who should lead this quest, Clarice said. Annabeth, of course. Percy knew Annabeth had been waiting for her own quest since she was a little kid, but now she looked uncomfortable. You've done as much as I have, Clarice, she said. You should go too. No way, Clarice said. I'm not going back in there. Travis Stoll chuckled. What's wrong, LaRue? Don't tell me you're chicken. Clarice got to her feet. It looked like she was going to pulverize Travis. But then she just said in a shaky voice, You don't understand anything, punk. I'm never going back in there again. Ever. She stormed out of the room, and Travis looked around sheepishly. I didn't mean to... The poor girl has just had a difficult year, Kyrene said. Now, do we have agreement that Annabeth should lead this quest? Everyone raised their hands in agreement, except for Quintus, who just stared at the table. Percy wondered if anyone else noticed. Very well, Kyrene said. Annabeth, my dear, it's your time to visit the Oracle, assuming you return to us in one piece. Now we shall discuss what to do next. Waiting for Annabeth was harder than Percy thought, even more than his own visit to the Oracle. He heard it speak prophecies twice before, the first time in the dusty attic of the big house. The second time the Oracle had come down from there for a little stroll in the woods to deliver a prophecy, and he still had nightmares about that. Percy never felt threatened by the Oracle's presence, but he heard stories about campers who had gone insane, who'd seen visions so real they died of fear. Kyrene was in deep conversation with Quintus and Argus. It looked like they were disagreeing about something. Quintus kept shaking his head. It was a little more than 5 minutes now. What could have been taking Annabeth so long? Percy was sure it hadn't taken him this long when he visited the Oracle. Percy, Juniper whispered. She appeared behind him and said, You should know, it wasn't just Luke that I saw around that cave. What do you mean? I was trying to say something, but he was right there. Who? The sword master, she said. He was poking around the rocks. Percy's stomach clenched. You mean Quintus? When? I don't know. We nymphs don't pay too much attention to time. It might have been a week ago, when he first showed up. Well, what was he doing? Did he go in? I'm not sure. He's creepy, Percy. I didn't even see him come into the glade. Suddenly, he was just there. You have to convince Grover. It's too dangerous. Juniper, Grover called. I better go, she said. Just remember what I said, Percy. Don't trust that man. And she disappeared. Percy felt more uneasy than ever. If Quintus was up to something, he needed Annabeth's advice. She might know what to make of Juniper's news. But where the heck was she? Whatever was happening up there with the oracle, it shouldn't have been taking her this long. Finally, Percy couldn't stand it anymore. It was against the rules, but then again, nobody was watching. But when he got to the attic steps, he heard some sobbing noises from behind the steps. Behind the steps was another door, going down to a basement. Percy was sure he never noticed that there all the other times he had been back here. Inside, Clarice was feeding someone nectar. It was Chris Rodriguez. "It's okay, just try a little more nectar," Clarice said. "You're an illusion, Mary," he sobbed. "My name is not Mary," said Clarice. Her voice sounded gentle and a bit sad. "My name is Clarice, remember?" For someone like her, Percy never knew she could sound that way. "It's so dark," Chris said. "Then come outside. The sunlight will help you," Clarice said. 1,000 skulls. The earth keeps healing him. "Please, Chris, you have to get better. You have to. Please," Clarice pleaded. "Mr. D will be back soon. He's an expert in madness. Please just hang on." Chris's eyes were like a cornered rat's, wild and desperate. "There's no way out, Mary. No way out." Then he seemed to get a glimpse at Percy. "The son of Poseidon. He's horrible." Percy backed away, hoping Clarice hadn't seen him. He listened for her to come charging after him. But instead, she just kept talking to Chris and tried to feed him more nectar. Percy couldn't believe all this. Chris was shivering in a dark basement, afraid to come out, and mumbling about someone named Mary. No wonder Clarice didn't want anything to do with the labyrinth. And maybe she thought it was part of Chris's hallucinations, but son of Poseidon? He had been looking at Percy, and yet why did Percy get the feeling Chris hadn't been talking about him at all? And Clarice's tenderness? It never even occurred to Percy that she might like someone. The way she said Chris's name, she'd known him before he changed sides. She'd known him a lot better than Percy realized. What could have happened to Chris while in the labyrinth? Then he heard a creaking noise from above, like the attic door opening. Percy would have been so dead if he was caught sneaking around, and he ran back to the living room. Thank the Olympians, Chiron, Quintus, and Argus still didn't notice. Seconds later, Annabeth appeared in the door behind Percy. "My dear," Chiron said, "you've made it. What did she have to tell you?" "I got the prophecy. I will lead the quest to find Daedalus's workshop." Nobody cheered. Well, everyone liked Annabeth, and they were all happy for her that she finally got a quest, but this seemed insanely dangerous. "What exactly did the prophecy say, my dear? The wording is important, you know," Chiron told her. Annabeth took a deep breath. "Well, it said, 'You shall delve in the darkness of the endless maze, the dead, the traitor, and the lost one raise. You shall rise or fall by the ghost king's hand, the child of Athena's final stand.'" "The lost one! That must be Pan," Grover said. "With the dead and the traitor," Percy added. Not so great, and not to mention the final stand part. Everyone looked around uncomfortably. Annabeth was a daughter of Athena, and a final stand didn't sound good. "Hey, we shouldn't just jump straight to conclusions," Selena said. "Annabeth isn't really the only child of Athena, you know." "But who's this Ghost King?" Beckendorf asked. No one answered. Percy thought about the iris message he had seen of Nico summoning spirits. He had a bad feeling the prophecy was connected to that. "Are there any more lines?" Chiron asked. "The prophecy does not sound complete." Annabeth hesitated. "I don't remember exactly." Chiron raised an eyebrow. Annabeth was known for her memory. She never forgot something she heard. "Something about destroy with a hero's final breath," she said. "And?" Chiron asked. "Look, the point is I have to go in, find the workshop, stop Luke, and I need help." She turned to Percy. Will you come with me, Percy?" Yes, he said, without even hesitating. She smiled, and for the first time in days, that made it all worthwhile. Grover, you too, she said. The wild god is waiting. Grover seemed to forget how much he hated being underground. The line about the lost one had completely energized him. I'll go pack extra recyclables for snacks. And Tyson, I'll need you too. Yay! Now wait a second, Annabeth, Chiron said. This goes against the ancient laws. A hero is allowed only 2 companions. I need them all, she insisted. It's important, Chiron. Percy wasn't sure why she seemed so certain, but he was happy she included Tyson. He couldn't imagine leaving him behind. He was huge and strong and great at figuring out mechanical things. Unlike satyrs, Cyclopes had no problem underground. Annabeth, Chiron said, consider well. You would be breaking the ancient laws, and there's always consequences. Last winter, 5 went on a quest to save Artemis, and only 3 of those heroes survived. Think on that. 3 is a good number. There are 3 Fates, 3 Furies, and 3 Olympian sons of Kronos, even 3 daughters. It is a good, strong number that stands against many dangers. 4 is risky. Annabeth took a deep breath. I know, but we have to. Please. Percy could tell Chiron didn't like it. Quintus was studying both Percy and Annabeth back and forth, like he was trying to decide which one of them would come back alive. Chiron sighed and said, Very well, let us adjourn. The quest members must prepare themselves. Tomorrow at dawn, we'll send all 4 of you into the Labyrinth. Quintus pulled Percy aside and said, I have a bad feeling about this. Percy remembered what Juniper said about him scouting out the maze. Percy wouldn't trust him, but when Quintus looked at him, Percy saw real concern in his eyes. I don't like the idea of you going down there, or any of you, Quintus said, but if you must, I want you to remember something. The Labyrinth exists to fool you and distract you. That is very dangerous for half-bloods. We are easily distracted. You've been in there? Percy asked. A long time ago, he answered. I barely escaped with my life. Most who enter aren't that lucky. Percy, just remember, while you're in there, keep your mind on what matters most. If you could do that, you might find your way out. Then he pulled out a silver tube and gestured Percy to take it. A dog whistle? Not just any dog whistle, Quintus said. It's made out of Stygian ice from the river Styx. You can use it to call Mrs. O'Leary for help wherever you are, anywhere in the world. I'm not sure if it'll work while in the maze, but it's worth a try. I'd be happier if you had it. The ice won't melt, but you can only use it once, because once it's blown, it will shatter, so you must make it count. This made Percy remember the time when Luke gave him flying shoes which backfired just before Luke ran away. He also thought about when Juniper warned him not to trust Quintus. But Percy just said, Thanks. He shoved the whistle in his pocket, left the room, and promised himself he would never use it.